The picture's doctored, right?
Yeah.
Trump insisted this was real. He insisted 7 times it was real. You were his chief of staff. How do you deal with that insanity? But a sane human being would look at that and say, don't be silly, that's not a real picture. A 4-year-old child could tell you that that is a photoshopped image. The reporter tried to tell him it was a photoshopped image. He shouted at the reporter.
It's an easy rhetorical point. It doesn't make you...
Leaders should be smart,
It
not
doesn't
dumb.
make you a fascist authoritarian
Put
if you don't do what you've just said.
Put that to one side.
Face it.
You accept that leaders should be smart and not dumb. That's a basic criteria.
I love to sit down and watch Trump's bootlicking sycophants get dismantled on live telly, and we've got a cracking one here from a few months ago. But before we get into it, I'd love to give a big shout out to Dan from Queensland, Australia, Brian Farrelly from Canada, John Pelosi from North Carolina, James from New Zealand, Wendy from the UK, Kenneth Burridge from Aarhus, and Terry from the south of England. It's people like you who make what we do here possible. Right, so Mehdi Hasan versus Mick Mulvaney. The former White House chief of staff, the man who stood beside Trump through absolute chaos and now apparently wants credit for, what exactly? Bipartisan dialogue? Fiscal responsibility? This is a man who helped run that operation, and now he's doing the media circuit acting like he wasn't knee-deep in every mess. This interview reportedly gets heated. Immigration raids, questions about fitness for office, authoritarian tendencies, all of it. And I cannot wait to see how Mulvaney tries to spin his way through this one. If you love watching me unravel disasters like this, please click that subscribe button. And while you're at it, if you'd like to get a shout out in my next video, then like the video, share it with a friend, and tell me your name and where you're watching from.
We mentioned Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Yeah.
He was the man sent illegally to El Salvador by the Trump administration. They tried to justify his deportation by saying he was an MS-13 gang leader. Trump put out a picture, he held up a picture of his knuckles showing MS-13 were photoshopped onto his hand.
Yeah.
Terry Moran of ABC News then did an interview with Donald Trump. Remarkable moment, one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen in my life as a TV journalist. Trump held up this picture.
And the picture was doctored.
The picture's doctored, right?
Yeah.
Trump insisted this was real. He insisted 7 times it was real. You were his chief of staff. How do you deal with that insanity?
It's not. I don't consider it to be insanity.
What do you consider it to be?
Here's what I consider to be bad staff work. Absolutely. Someone brought that picture into the President of the United States and said, Mr. President, here's the information. Part of my job, by the way.
Joking?
No, absolutely. Let's talk seriously about what the role of chief of staff is.
Okay.
Is to make sure that the information that gets to the President of the United States is good information. Because there's a lot of crap information out there. And you cannot let that stuff get into the President of the United States. Someone gave him this and said, Mr. President, look at this guy's knuckles. But a good staff work would prevent that type of information from getting in front of the President of the States.
So I agree with you. A good staffer would prevent this from getting to him. They wouldn't have doctored the photo to begin with. Let's not even get into the dishonesty of this administration. But a sane human being would look at that and say, don't be silly, that's not a real picture. A 4-year-old child could tell you that that is a photoshopped image. The reporter tried to tell him it was a photoshopped image. He shouted at the reporter. He insisted 7 times that this was not photoshopped.
If the head of the Department of National Intelligence brought me that photograph and said, this is a picture of the guy, who am I I would probably believe that.
And after humiliating himself on national TV, would you not fire that person for giving you fake information? The White House just doubled down on the lie, which is what the White House does.
If I found out the information was false, there would be repercussions, yes.
If you were chief of staff at that moment?
I don't like bad information getting in front of the President.
The current chief of staff doubled down on this. They've never apologized for this lie he told on national television 7 times.
A difference of opinion in how to handle the White House.
But it was a lie he told 7 times.
Based upon what you're showing me, I believe that to be the case. I've never seen the man's knuckles, but yeah.
Hold on. Everyone here heard you say about 90 seconds ago, it's a doctored image. You and I agreed it was a doctored image.
It does look to me like it's doctored.
It is a doctored image. Everyone knows it's a doctored image, except Donald Trump. See, I'm the guy who normally calls Trump a liar, so he lies a lot. It's worse than lying. I think he actually believed this, which makes me worry about his mental health.
We can talk about his mental health if you want to.
We will shortly, but I just want to deal with should heads roll for this?
I can't defend that, and there would certainly be conversations in my White House over how to handle that.
I'm glad you're not defending it, but you've defended a lot of other stuff. So let's bring in our patient panel of experts. Let me begin with George Conway, lawyer, co-founder of the Anti-Trump Lincoln Project. George, you were a lifelong Republican. You're now a very well-known, outspoken critic, I think it's fair to say, of the president. Mick thinks it's unfair to talk about fascism, authoritarianism. He didn't accept any of the examples I gave. Why do you think Trump is an authoritarian?
Because of the very things that Mick wrote about in 2020. He thought it was possible that Donald Trump would ignore the results of the 2020 election. That's a fascist. That's authoritarian. He's also a pathological liar because he continued after people told him, people who came into the White House and told him, you lost. And he didn't want to believe them. He brought in other people. No staff person could prevent him from doing that. He wanted somebody to justify his lies. He is a pathological liar with no moral conscience, no decency, no honor. And that is the problem. And all of those people end up being fascists. You were right after January 6th. And I think it's a disgrace that you now sit here and try to defend him when basically he's done nothing but get worse.
I know the information he was getting at the time. And if you were in the White House and every single person who walked in and said, you won, you won, you won, you won, what would you believe?
The evidence was to the contrary. They didn't say he won. His own lawyers told him he won. The Justice Department people told him they would resign if they tried to make him.
As George points out, the DOJ were telling him he lost. Bill Barr was telling him he lost. The guy's telling me he won was the My Pillow guy. Maybe he shouldn't have been inviting the My Pillow guy into the White House.
And
maybe that's disqualifying.
I don't like the fact that My Pillow guy was a senior advisor to the president.
Whose fault was that? Whose fault was that?
Donald Trump is ultimately responsible for his advisors. There's no question.
So why give him a pass then?
Because I understand how the presidency works. It's one of the most isolated.
There's never been a president like this. You know this.
That's fine, but that doesn't mean it's fascist. All presidents are different. Yes, he is his own thing, and I get that.
Isn't the problem, though, Mick, twice now tonight you've said he got bad information on the photo, he got bad information on the election. Maybe the President of the United States should be someone who's smart enough to reject bad information.
Oh no. No. I need everyone to just sit with what we witnessed there, because that was not a gaffe. That was not a slip-up. That was the President of the United States holding up a clearly doctored photograph and insisting 7 times to a reporter's face that it was real. And Mulvaney's defense? Bad staff work. Bad staff work. As if some intern snuck a fake picture past security. The man ran the Office of Management and Budget. He was acting director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. He knows how information flows in government. He knows there's no magical staffer who hypnotized Donald Trump into believing obvious nonsense. Here's what kills me. George Conway sitting right there lays it out perfectly. This isn't about one bad photo. This is the same pattern we saw with the election lies. The same pattern we saw with the classified documents. When reality doesn't match what Trump wants, he simply rejects reality and demands everyone around him do the same. And you heard Mulvaney try to squirm away from accountability by saying, well, if someone told me it was real, I'd believe them too. Really? A 4-year-old could spot that Photoshop job, but somehow the President of the United States couldn't. The My Pillow guy was giving him election advice. Think about that. Mike Lindell had access to the Oval Office, while career intelligence professionals were being ignored. That's not bad staff work. That's a deliberate choice to surround yourself with people who tell you what you want to hear, instead of what's actually true.
Again, it's an easy rhetorical point. It doesn't make you.
Leaders should be smart.
It doesn't make you a fascist authoritarian if you don't do what you've just said.
Put that to one side.
Face it.
You accept that leaders should be smart and not dumb.
Yes,
basic criteria.
I would prefer people to be smart and not dumb.
And yet tonight you've told the audience that Donald Trump was dumb on 2 occasions. He listened to a My Pillow guy and he listened to an unnamed aide who gave him a clearly doctored image.
My difficulty with the Trump decision-making was allowing those people to be advisors to the president in the first place.
Okay, let me bring in Greg. Greg Swenson, do you believe that Donald Trump won the 2020 election?
I'm really not sure, but I think what's important here is one of the reasons he won in 2024 is because of the pressure from the press, pressure from critics, not only calling the fascist and a racist, but also they start accusing you. How could you vote for a guy who's a misogynist, even though he's not? It's one of the reasons he won, is that the people, got a little bit offended by this sort of judgment and this virtue signaling from his critics when he's done a lot of things really well. No one's perfect, but he's doing so much good for the people that voted for him, especially the working class people in America.
I apologize, Greg, I didn't introduce you to the audience. Greg is the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK, which is why I asked you about Trump and the election. Christina Greer is here, Associate Professor of Political Science at Fordham University, been waiting very patiently. Christina, is this just about liberals being upset about the way Trump speaks, or is it something more than that in your view?
I find that the defenders of Trump like to sort of talk about semantics and sort of get tied up in words. What we are looking at is public servants. You have served this country diligently. We know your CV. but you know better, yet you refuse to do better. I think that's the piece that is so frustrating with liberals or people on the left, where you were in Congress, you understand the separation of powers, you understand checks and balances, and what you're looking at right now in Trump 2.0, where he's steamrolling Congress, where he's ignoring the courts, where he's absolutely no respect for the Constitution, and in the litany of things that you listed, George, the one thing that you forgot was shame. We are dealing with a man who has zero shame. And what's even worse is that we're looking at people who were serving in Congress, who were Republicans, who actually know that this man is actually eroding our constitutional rights. And he's only able to do it because they're good-meaning Republicans who've just forgotten that they are here to serve the American people and not writing op-eds for one man and not serving one man.
I get the part that you don't like the fact that he has any shame. I get that. Is he the ideal person for president of the United States? No, but I'm okay with him being the president. I'm especially okay with him being the president over the other choice, because that's what we had. We had a binary choice. You don't get a chance to sit back. So one of the reasons I was critical of him in the Republican primary. Primaries are when we get a chance to go and say, you know what? I get to vote for the very best person I want. In general, it's a binary choice.
Can I just ask, what did Kamala Harris do? You obviously disagree with her politically. She's a Democrat, you're a Republican. Yeah. But what did she do that was worse than lighting the fuse of an insurrection?
It was the...
Wait, hold on. Did he just say, "I'm really not sure," when asked if Trump won in 2020? A sitting chairman of Republicans Overseas UK cannot bring himself to say Joe Biden won a free and fair election. That's where we are. That's the baseline now. And then Christina Greer absolutely nails it. She looks at Mulvaney and essentially says, "You know better, yet you refuse to do better." That's the whole thing right there. This isn't ignorance. This is complicity dressed up as pragmatism. But here's what the clip doesn't tell you. George Conway has been warning about this for years. This is a lifelong conservative, a man who helps get Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court. His wife worked in Trump's White House. And even he's sitting there saying, this man lit the fuse of an insurrection. When someone with Conway's credentials and conservative bona fides is sounding alarms about authoritarian tendencies, you'd think that might give pause to the Mulvaneys of the world. Instead, what do we get? We get, he's not the ideal person, but I'm okay with him being president. Okay with him. After January 6th. After the fake electors scheme. After he pressured state officials to find votes that didn't exist. We're meant to just move past all that because Kamala Harris exists. The normalization happening in real time is genuinely chilling. Constitutional erosion becomes acceptable because the alternative was a woman who prosecuted criminals for a living. Make it make sense.
I put it to you this way. You were worried, we all should be worried about a deterioration in democracy. There's no question about that. I happen to feel that the policies that she represented would be just as deteriorating. By the way, why did Donald Trump do so well in 2024? Because he got a message. He was struggling going into the primaries. Ron DeSantis, if you remember, was doing very well. And then he got charged in New York with this criminal charge for this financial thing. And it gave him this message. Look what they're doing to me. I'm rich, I'm famous, I'm white. If they can do it to me, imagine what they can do to you. That's a very powerful message because that is what the Democrats were doing. My point.
You didn't answer my question.
I am answering your question, which is that a lot of us sat back.
Charging Donald Trump for crimes that he clearly committed is worse than an insurrection. So, I mean, I'm quoting Bill Barr. Bill Barr said he committed a crime in Florida.
My point is, if you're worried about the long-term health of the democracy, you can look very critically at Kamala Harris.
Okay, let me ask you this. Last year, you said the Jeffrey Epstein scandal would have no political impact at all on Trump's election chances. And you were right about that. It didn't. But it's certainly impacting his presidency. It's probably the biggest story in America right now. It's divided the MAGA base. Many conservatives are furious with him and his administration. Trump, of course, is a former close friend of Epstein's. They're furious at him for not releasing the Epstein files, as he promised he would. Is it because, as Elon Musk has said, Donald Trump is in the Epstein files?
No, absolutely not. He's in the files. A lot of people in the files. This is if there was something in the files that was particularly damning about Donald Trump, the files would have been released by the Biden administration.
No, not if it was damning about Bill Clinton as well. Not if it was damning about.
Can I please just okay? If it was really damning about Donald Trump, they would have released at least that part. My guess is, and it's an educated guess, is that it's particularly damning of very important people on both sides of the political aisle, which is why Trump doesn't want to release it and why Biden didn't release it either. If it was just about Trump, it would have come out.
You were the chief of staff when Epstein apparently died by suicide
Was I?
in prison.
Yeah,
you were.
yeah,
Yeah, we
I think
checked.
so, yeah.
Trump at the time baselessly suggested that Bill Clinton might have killed him, as he does.
Baselessly?
Oh,
Okay.
you think Bill Clinton might have killed him? Okay, just checking. I don't know how loyal
Is
you
Bill
are
Clinton
to.
on the list?
I mean, you were
Well,
chief of staff at the time. You didn't come out and correct him, so maybe you do share that insane view.
Not my job.
That literally is your job as
it's
chief of
not.
staff.
No, no.
You just said earlier,
as
the
between-
chief of staff
Yeah,
controls
yeah.
information coming to Donald Trump. Who told him that Bill Clinton killed him?
It's not the job of the chief of staff to protect, to correct the president of the United States. And
You
between who knows the job of the chief of staff, you know a lot about a lot. You don't know a lot about.
But you just told me the definition was to protect Donald Trump. So you failed.
The job of the president of the United States is to make sure he gets good information.
And he
in front
failed
of him.
because someone told him that Bill Clinton killed Jeffrey Epstein, and you didn't protect him from that.
Did they tell him that?
Yeah, he retweeted a post saying that Bill Clinton could have killed him.
So again,
I mean, right. You told me that was a job description. Last thing on Epstein. You were the chief of staff. Yeah. Trump does make this claim in 2019. The DOJ now says, the Trump DOJ, it was definitely a suicide. No cover-up.
Yep.
There's no files. And yet they've released a tape from prison, which is missing a minute of footage, and which it now turns out seems to have been edited. You were the chief of staff.
Yeah.
Did you see the full footage at the time?
Oh.
Is this the full unedited footage from the prison cell that
I have
night?
no idea, and I never saw the original film, but I did read
What
about.
did you see?
I didn't see anything.
So for 6 months after his death, you're chief of staff, you don't see anything about Epstein?
No.
You don't think that's strange?
No, I don't think it was strange at all.
Why?
Because it's not the type of thing that rises up to the level of the President of the United States on an ordinary basis. It's not. No,
I mean, it literally is right now.
It is. That's dealing with the disclosure of the files, which are in the control of federal government. No, it would not have been the type of thing that we all sit around in the Situation Room and look at the video of.
But you didn't.
Of the Epstein thing. And by the way, the minute, I was reading about the minute gap, you may have read the same thing, is that apparently the video resets
That's
every
what they
single
said every night, apparently.
at midnight. So
but there's a trust deficit right now with this administration. But I got to ask again, you're saying you didn't see any of the video stuff, you weren't involved, this doesn't rise to the level of chief of staff or the White House, and yet you're confidently saying that Elon Musk is wrong and his name's not in the files. How do you know?
No, I didn't. No, I absolutely didn't. In fact, I think if you go back and look at the tape, I said, I imagine that Donald Trump's name is in the file someplace. There's photographs of them together. Okay. So if there's a file someplace, which I assume there is.
Trump says his name is not in anything. So he's lying.
I could imagine. Why? There'd be photographs of him.
But he said it's not him.
I have to imagine his name is on the list someplace. He was a member at Mar-a-Lago. By the way, Trump kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago for being too weird. True story.
I mean, he also said he's a terrific guy who likes younger women. So. Yeah. Mick Mulvaney, thank you for being here. We've got more to go. We're going to talk to our very patient audience here at London's Conway Hall. We're going to go back to our panel of experts. We've got much more to talk to Mick Mulvaney, former White House Chief of Staff to Donald Trump. After a very short break, don't go anywhere.
So let me get this straight. Mick Mulvaney was the White House Chief of Staff when Jeffrey Epstein allegedly died by suicide in federal custody. One of the most high-profile prisoners in America, connected to presidents and princes and billionaires. And Mulvaney's defense is, it's not the type of thing that rises up to the level of President of the United States. Excuse me? A man with connections to the sitting president dies under mysterious circumstances in a federal prison, and the chief of staff just doesn't look into it, doesn't see any footage, doesn't ask any questions. For 6 months. That's his story and he's sticking to it. And then, and this is where my head nearly exploded, he casually admits Trump is probably in the files somewhere, just throws that out there like it's nothing. I imagine his name is on the list someplace. But Trump himself said his name isn't in anything. So either Trump is lying, or Mulvaney doesn't know what he's talking about. Pick one, you can't have both. The double standards here are absolutely staggering. Remember when every conspiracy theory about anyone on the progressive side of politics got amplified for years? Endless investigations, congressional hearings. But Trump retweets a baseless accusation that Bill Clinton murdered Epstein, and Mulvaney just shrugs? Not my job to correct the president. But you literally just told Mehdi that controlling information flow to the president is the job of chief of staff. You failed. You failed by your own definition. He said it right to his face, and Mulvaney just sat there blinking. And here's the thing that really gets me about this whole Epstein saga. Trump promised to release those files, made a big show of it. His base was demanding it. Elon Musk was demanding it. And now suddenly there's excuses and delays and edited footage with convenient minute-long gaps that supposedly happen every night at midnight. Right. How convenient. The same crowd that screamed, "Lock her up," for years over emails. The same people who insisted Hillary Clinton ran a child trafficking ring out of a pizza shop basement. Those people are now perfectly content with their guy burying the Epstein files, while his former chief of staff admits on international television he has no idea what's in them, despite being in the room when it all happened. This is what accountability looks like under MAGA. It doesn't exist. There's always an excuse, always a deflection, always someone else to blame or another scandal to point at. The rules simply do not apply equally, and they don't even pretend otherwise anymore. What we've witnessed across this entire interview is a masterclass in exactly what Mehdi Hasan has been warning about for years. The normalization, the excuses, the both sides deflections that always conveniently land on protecting Trump. Mulvaney sat there and admitted Trump probably lies about his Epstein connections, admitted he didn't do his job, admitted he's fine with a man who incited an insurrection being president again. And he said all of this like it was perfectly reasonable. That's where we are now. So here's my question for all of you watching. What does accountability actually mean anymore? Because apparently, you can attempt to overturn an election and still be considered acceptable. You can bury documents about child trafficking and still claim moral authority. You can surround yourself with people who tell you doctored photos are real and call it bad staff work. At some point, voters have to decide what standards actually matter, not just for their side, but for everyone. Democracy doesn't survive on vibes and hoping your team wins. It survives on people caring enough to demand better. From everyone. Subscribe to the channel and drop your name and where you're watching from in the comments so I can give you a proper shout out next time. And if you want to support what we're doing here, hit that join button below to become a channel member. Now, if you enjoyed watching Mehdi absolutely dismantle Mulvaney's defences, you're going to love what happens when a British reporter takes on a MAGA congressman and the entire room erupts in laughter. Trust me on this one, it's spectacular. Link's right there. I'll see you in that one.